I just wanted to say good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Jonathan Brown, the Assistant Director of HR here at the Department of State. If you haven't had a chance to sign in, we have a sign-in sheet right over there on the big table at the entranceway. I just want to publicly thank the staff of the Career Mobility Office who were very gracious enough to come in and give this presentation. Because this, as you guys know, as part of the Employee Engagement Survey, was one of the things DOS employees identified as something they want to know about. They want to learn about how the merit system works and how they can further, their careers. And hence the reason why the Career Mobility Office were gracious to come today. Just a few housekeeping things. If you guys aren't familiar, the bathrooms are just around the corner here. And if you have any questions, I'll let the staff either answer them or they may tell you, wait till the end. But I just want to thank you all again, once again, for coming.
Hi, everybody. How are we doing today?
Good.
Good. I love that. Awesome. We are, as John said, we are from the Career Mobility Office of the Department of Civil Service. My name is Jessica Henkel. This is my coworker, Taylor Darby. Hello. This is our awesome coworker, Christine Dervage. We are here today to present the Civil Service Merit System. We'll go over a lot of cool things, how transfers work and things like that. If you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and pop in as they come up. That's completely fine. One of us are more than happy to talk to you about it. So our office, we are located at Agency Building 1, right near the Plaza location. We are funded by the unions, and we take policy direction from GOER, that's the Governor's Office of Employee Relations, as well as the Department of Civil Service, of course. We are employee-based, so whereas while we're part of the Staffing Services Division, a lot of the times the staffing representatives, they deal directly with agencies. We're more employee-based, so we deal directly with employees. We help them understand their options, where they're looking to go, things like that. Yeah.
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah.
We're having a hard time hearing.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'll try. I don't have a high voice or a very loud voice, but I'll certainly try. So, yeah, we take policy direction from GOER and DCS and things like that. We are Staffing Services Division. That's all right. So some general things that we'll cover today, like we said, is how state positions are filled, a lot of general info, the primary 3 ways that individuals are hired into permanent competitive service through the New York State system. We'll go over the exam process, everybody's favorite part. We have and then eligible list transfers and reinstatements. And then before we really get into the meat and potatoes, I just wanted to touch on this. All of you should have this green packet for our WebEx people. This was sent to you electronically via email. We do have this packet on the side here. We have the Career Mobility Office info packet. Really, this just gives a lot of general information, how the Rule of 3 works, eligible list, general info, things like that. But really, the fun part is going to be all in the back. I like to keep this at my desk because if you need to contact your union, so you need to contact EAP, this is all going to be their primary contact info. So keep this handy at your desk and definitely think about it when you need it. At the end here, when you want to tell us that, oh, it was okay, we have the evaluation sheet on the left-hand side. On the right, we have the printout of the slides here with the lines you can take the notes. We got it, which we'll go over at the end, our glossary of titles inquiry tool. And then the final one is the resume and interviewing prep packet. This is going to give a lot of helpful tips on how to build a resume, the types of resumes, common interview questions, things like that. So that's really handy to keep near you as well. All right. All right, so first things first. Does everybody know their appointment status and jurisdictional class? No, I know, it's a tough one. Sound like word salad, it's really weird, I totally get it. So we'll go over those. Now, like we said, it is appointment status and jurisdictional class. Appointment status refers to whether you're permanent, temporary, or provisional. Now, have we all heard those terms before?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. A lot of us are probably permanent. This is, of course, usually when you participate in an exam or maybe you're hired permanent or competitive or non-competitive. We'll get into that in a moment. Temporary is really typically when individuals are hired for a certain amount of time and then they're expected to be let go after the fact. A common example of this is the tax info aid at the Department of Tax and Finance. It's a very common one. Provisional, have you heard this term before too? Yes? All right, does anyone want to tell me what it is? Yes.
You have a position, but you have to pass the eligible on a list.
Boom, you got it. Yep. So for anybody who might not have heard, provisional is when, say they have a promotional title, right? Your agency has a promotional title. The list currently isn't usable, but they really need somebody in a position, so they hire someone on a provisional basis. What we call is just a glorified temp, but the person is hired on a provisional with the expectation that they're going to take the exam when it comes up next, pass it, and be reachable in order to become permanent in that formerly provisional position. And when they become permanent, that's usually when they start probation, because you can only do it when you're permanent. All right, so competitive, non-competitive, exempt, and labor. Now, competitive makes up roughly 80% of New York State positions. This refers to when an individual takes an exam, they're hired off of it, and then they're in the position. Non-competitive is still permanent, but there is no examination involved, so the individual really just meets the minimum qualifications. We see this a lot for titles that are very specific in specific occupational fields. And we also have exempted labor. I want to say these make up roughly 5% each of the New York State workforce. Exempt is typically specifically appointed positions. I know one example is like a confidential stenographer. Maybe they work directly with politically appointed officials. A lot of politically appointed officials are also exempt. And then labor is pretty much exactly how it sounds. There's no minimum qualifications. Typically, the individual just has to be able to physically perform the duties of the job. All right. And then, in addition, there's also appointment status and jurisdictional class, but also bargaining and negotiating units. Is everyone familiar with bargaining and negotiating units? Isn't that those terms? Yeah, a lot of the times it's just a fancy word for a union. But the appointment status and jurisdictional class, that's going to determine really your mobility options, whether you are eligible for reemployment if you're in that scenario, your reinstatement options if possible, and transfer if you're eligible to do so, whereas the bargaining negotiating unit, or union, really determines your salary and health insurance. All right. So now that we've covered the basics, we'll turn it over to Taylor for the actual exam. Okay. All right. So we're getting into exam announcements. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. All right. So we have three main types of civil service exams. Either open competitive, promotion, and I know it's kind of small text for those of you in the back, but we have two kind of subsections here for promotion exams. Departmental and interdepartmental. We're going to get into just what those are in just a few moments. And then we have transition exams. Let's break these out a little further. Open competitive exams. By a show of hands, how many of you think New York State employees can take an open competitive exam? All right, good, about half? Okay, so yes, New York State employees can take open competitive exams. Open competitive exams are open to all qualified individuals. You might be a state employee, you might be somewhere in the private sector. It really, as long as you meet those qualifications for the position, you would be eligible for to take these exams. A very common example of an open competitive exam that many of you might have heard of is the Professional Career Opportunities, or PCO exam. That's really a staple exam within civil service. It's historically been open to anyone with a bachelor's degree. It really targets a wide variety of people, but especially like new college graduates is really trying to target that population. That's one example. Okay, we have promotion exams. So for promotion exams, you must be a permanent New York State employee and a qualifying title for a certain amount of time. And we're going to get into an example of an exam announcement in just a bit. But when you're looking at promotional exam announcements, you'll want to look at what titles qualify, right, in those minimum qualifications, and also the amount of time that you have to have been in that title in order to qualify. So sometimes if you were just hired, you may not be eligible versus someone who maybe has been here a year and may be eligible to take it. But we're going to get through examples of those in a little bit.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What if you were a permanent employee but weren't current?
For
That's the private sector and want to come back, but you have high degree.
So for promotion exams, it's only open to permanent and current New York State employees. If we can get into this a little further, if possibly you were reinstated, it might be an option again, but for promotional, you do have to remain within state service. Open competitive, you could take no matter where you go. Promotional, you will be more limited if you left state service. So for departmental promotion exams, those are open to all qualified as individuals of a specific agency. So if Department of State has an exam only, maybe for a title only used at this agency, that would be an example of a departmental exam. And it wouldn't necessarily be open to any other agencies unless specified that. Sometimes departmental promotion exams might be open to like 2 agencies, but typically you may see it being 1. Versus interdepartmental promotion exams. Those are open to all qualified employees of New York State. A great example is, excuse me, like the secretary one. That's a well-used title throughout state agencies statewide. So interdepartmental means it's going to be open to really any agency so long as you're in the qualifying titles and you meet the time requirements for those. And transition exams. So these allow current New York State employees, again, you do have to be a current employee of the state, take a transition exam, to kind of transition career paths. So another good example of this transition exam is the PATT, the Public Administration Traineeship Transition Exam. That's a mouthful. And basically it allows a variety of clerical type positions to take an exam that fills some professional traineeships. It's actually almost identical to the traineeships that are filled from the PCO, that Professional Career Opportunity exam. The beauty is you may not need a bachelor's degree to take it, but it's giving you a shot to better yourself and get into a professional career track in administration or something like that. And again, you also, you have to be a current employee. You would need to be in a qualifying title for a specific amount of time, and that's always going to be listed right on that exam announcement. Okay. So now that we've talked about the type, I know this top column actually says type. We're going to actually break it out more by format of the exam. So our first format is something called an evaluation of training and experience. Now, these exams don't necessarily feel like an exam to some people because you're not going to like a local school and taking an exam for these. You're basically usually filling out a questionnaire or an application. And based on how you answer your question, all that information is input and then stored. So based on what you put in that questionnaire, it's taken and reviewed and stored. So some people may think that they're non-competitive because they didn't go to a test center, but they may still, in fact, be competitive. They just took a different form of an exam, the T&E. You'll see this a lot with information technology specialists. That's usually an evaluation of training experience. They might ask you about how much experience maybe you have with a help desk or something like that. It's always important to be very thorough with training, evaluations of training experience because you can only be rated based on the information provided. Written exams are probably everybody's favorite thing to do on a Saturday or Sunday. You usually are going to a local high school, a college, something like that. Usually you're filling out a Scantron sheet. That's usually what most people think of with an exam, and it is the most common. And then oral. These are probably the least common form of exams. They're really, I like to call them like situation-based assessments. So, for example, the corrections captains, the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, they sit down in front of a panel and they're posed questions, kind of right on the spot. So, you know, if you hear of potential riot breaking out in a prison, what would you do? Walk us through all the steps of how you would deal with this situation or cope with this situation. Another great example of an oral exam our lottery marketing reps, they actually basically set up a storefront and have you sell to like a store owner to really prove your sales skills and abilities. You might work with someone who might be resistant to wanting to take in the product, things like that. So it's really designed to evaluate your thought process and how you think on your feet. These are not common, like I said, because they're tough to administer, but sometimes you will see them. For exam scheduling, there's typically two types. There's periodic examinations. Those are when the exam might be held every 2, 4, 8 years, depending on the agency's needs for that title and recruitment, versus continuous recruitment. Those are going to be high priority and hard to fill titles. So instead of waiting for an exam to come out in 4 years, continuous recruitment exams are usually, you're submitting applications on a rolling basis. You see this a lot with things like nursing. We always need nurses in the state at a variety of different areas. So nurses are a key example. Information technology specialists, again, I believe those are still continuous recruitment. So if you're ever looking to see what maybe is accepting applications currently in terms of continuous recruitment, sometimes that may be a quicker process in terms of exams than the periodically held ones. But unfortunately with those, you really just have to wait until whenever that next holding of an exam is. And I know it's a little small, we do have a link to where you can go to look at those continuous recruitment exams, but we can walk you through where to find those as well on the state exam page. Okay, so quick summary key points. So to look at current examination announcements with exams that are currently accepting applications, you would go on the civil service website. There's a little green bar across the top. I usually tell people to click on the option that says Job Seekers, and a drop-down menu will appear. From there, the top option will say State Examination. The one below it is going to say Local. Unless you're interested in local exams, don't click there if you want state examination. From there, there's going to be various links broken out by current open competitive exams, current promotion and transition exams, and then you have your continuous recruitment is usually towards the bottom. It's broken out by category. If there's one point of a few that you take away from today, it's to sign up for the exam announcement email notification system. This is huge if you haven't done so already, because it alerts you anytime any new exams are announced, open competitive, promotion, transition. It really breaks my heart when people call and say they had no idea their promotion title was currently or was accepting applications and that deadline was passed. Don't let it happen to you. It's not fun. Sign up for that email notification system so that you never miss anything coming your way. Another thing to note on the state exams page, there's a tentative examination schedule for both promotion and open competitive exams that are scheduled to be announced in the coming months. So if you're ever wondering, maybe what's coming up in the fall, that's a great place to look on the state exams page. Review every announcement very carefully and apply if you meet the qualifications. So if there's a promotion exam and it's only open to DOS employees, can a DOT employee apply? No. But it happens, and once they apply, they're out that fee and they can't get it back. So just make sure you really read those carefully. If you are approved for an exam announcement, you're usually going to get an admission notice about a week or two prior to the exam. It's going to give general information like the date, the time, the location of the exam. That admission notice is important. Keep that someplace safe until the exam because you have to bring it with you, and you usually need to sign it in the presence of that test monitor. If you're disqualified, you'll also receive a letter noting those reasons why. We're going to talk about this a little further, but disqualification letters aren't necessarily the end and be all. It's only that you're disqualified based on the information you provided. Sometimes people accidentally leave things out, they forgot to attach a credential, whatever the case may be. If you're disqualified, and you strongly feel you qualify, there will be a letter under the qualification notice, and it'll be routing you to the staffing representative in civil service who's overseeing that exam, and you'll be able to talk through specifics with them. Okay, so now we have just a quick example of an examination announcement. So up at the top, we have our name of our exam, we have our date of the exam, the application deadline, those are very strict. So if it's January 17th, can we apply on January 19th and expect to get in? No, probably not. So pay attention to those. Usually the opening period from the exam being announced to the application deadline, I think it's usually 3-4 weeks. So you have some time, but again, all goes back to that email notification. We have the exam number over on the left-hand side, the exam title, what employees this exam is open to. So this is the Secretary 1. This is our interdepartmental exam because it's open to multiple agencies in this situation. Salary, we have starting salary information, and then you have that non-refundable processing fee. I believe it varies by salary grade, but that's something to keep note of. Okay, so who is qualified to take this exam? Again, you should see right here on the exam announcement if it's interdepartmental or departmental. In the minimum qualifications, it will say, on or before the date of the exam, you must be a qualified employee of New York State, and then it's going to specify what titles are qualifying. So, for example, here we have a bunch of clerical titles that are qualifying for the Secretary 1. If your title's not on there, unfortunately, chances are you're not going to qualify. If they're not there, there's really no wiggle room with that. If you were appointed, and so we have two sets of qualifications here. We have qualifications to take the exam. That's number 1. So, for example, you must be a qualified employee of New York State and have had 3 months of permanent, competitive, or 55 DC service as one of these titles. So 3 months to take the exam. Now we have our second set of qualifications. Qualifications to be appointed from the eligible list. So after 1 year of service as described in the minimum qualifications, so these titles up above, successful candidates will be qualified for appointment from the eligible list. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? All right, so now we have the candidate application process, and Jess is going to walk us through that a little bit more. All right. So, the exam fee, yay! Is there a fee to apply? Like Taylor said earlier, you're going to want to check the exam announcement. On the example she gave, it was in this little box that was right around here. This one, of course, shows $10. It could vary, $35 for some, $25 for others, but it does say non-refundable processing. The reason it says that, and it's unfortunately non-refundable, is that it's because it's the fee to actually have your application processed. So unfortunately, even if you are disqualified because that application was still processed, that's why the fee is unfortunately non-refundable. However, in some cases, are any of you represented by CSEA or PES? Awesome. Yeah, definitely when you take an exam, contact them for information because a lot of the time you may be able to get it reimbursed if you pass the exam, or sometimes I know CSEA will just cover some of them up to a certain amount, so definitely contact them before you take an exam. If anything does come up and say you forget, that's okay. We have a fee unit here at the Department of Civil Service. It's going to be that number right there, so just say, hey, I forgot to click the little box that says, yeah, I may be exempt from this. Give them a call, and they'll be able to talk to you about it, possibly reimburse you and fix it up for you. And we went over minimum qualifications a little bit earlier. These are extremely strict. So I know a lot of the times titles will be very, very similar. So administrative aid versus administrative assistant or what have you. They're technically going to be different titles. So for that reason, you're going to want to really comb through those minimum qualifications because you have to make sure that you meet those minimum qualifications and make sure that you have the proper time and the proper title. clearly show how you meet the minimum qualifications and indicate your time and title, or just open competitive really, really indicate, I have my degree in this field, because omissions are not going to be ruled in your favor. So say a minimum qualification requires that you have a biology degree, and you do have one, but you just sign up and send it in blank, and then you get disqualified. Well, why? You have a biology degree. Well, you didn't put that on there. So I know it seems basic, but I've seen these, and believe it or not, you'd be shocked at the amount of blank submissions or applications that people send in. So save yourself the headache. Make sure that you put everything in there. And as Taylor mentioned, there's no extensions, unfortunately, because their thought process is, you know, if we let you go in one day late, well, then the person who signed up after you, and the day after that, and the day after that, and eventually they have to have the exam. So, all right. How cute is that? So what if you have a conflict with the test date? You're not feeling great. Or maybe you scheduled a cruise like 2 years ago. I mean, that stuff takes forever to plan, you know? Something comes up. I know, unfortunately, an individual actually just called our office looking for this number because a week before the Professional Career Opportunities exam this past April, he had, unfortunately, a family member who passed away. So he was able to call test administration so that he could be with his family for that time, and they were able to get him a new date. So definitely keep this in mind. You never know, maybe something may come up if you have a prior commitment. So make sure you keep that in mind. And civil service does have a phone tree, but don't worry. Us three spent a very long time in a meeting room one day going through all these. So you can just hit 1, 2, like, don't worry about it, you're good to go. So
We tested them for you.
all right, so we'll get into how tests are held and scored now. All right, so as this says, you know how, are you all familiar with ELM, the Eligible List Management System website, where you go in and view all those awesome lists? So great. Yeah, so great, I know. So the way that they're scored is actually kind of particular. So everybody gets a raw score that they're, and of course, shown and listed on, but then they get seniority credits after that. So how many of you have been with the state for more than 5 or 6 years? Awesome. Are you familiar with the seniority credits with promotion and transition exams?
Yes, but it doesn't seem like they've ever on.
Oh, no. Well, they are calculated.
And the reason I say that is because you're supposed to get a point for every 5 years or something along those lines.
Sure.
But if you look at the website and you see our scores, everybody's score.
Yeah.
Suppose the scores are coming out in 80, 85, 90.
Yeah.
My thought process is how are we getting those points when we clearly are rounded in the 80, 85, 90.
Right.
And if we should have 8 points for 1 year or 1 point for 2 years, I don't see people with 92, 97,
right.
98.
And
what happened to our extra years that we're supposed to be
doing? Yeah. No, you make a lot of sense. And we'll touch on that briefly, however. It is important to keep in mind that while you do make a phenomenal point, and I love that you brought it up, a lot of
actually called you guys about that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great question. We unfortunately aren't able to see all that super cool info. The testing unit is like on lockdown. It's like Fort Knox in there. I mean, it's a floor away from us, and we can't even really scan our badge to get in or get out, you know, slam the door in our face. But a lot of the exams are going to be weighted differently. So a lot of it may depend possibly on, you know, it's promotion transition or open competitive and things like that. So say my thought process is, and I don't know if this is 100% correct, but what may happen is, say if you have 2 seniority credits, it may bump you up from the band of 80 to 85 or things like that. But because we don't have access to that info, I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer on it. However, that's a very good question.
Because I actually did on my exam. I questioned it.
Yeah.
And then when I paused the question about the exam, the point, they said it was actually the PAT.
Yeah.
They said that if you wanted to review the PAT, you had to let them know prior to taking the exam. That some exams you have to let them know prior to. And I was, well, how would you want to know you want to review the exam prior to the exam?
Yeah, you know.
Some exams you have to let them know prior to the exam you want to review it in case you fall. You're just going to fail.
Right.
And that was my first time. They're like, well, you have to let us know. So some of your exams, you have to let them know that you, in case you want to, you think you might use it, you have to let them know prior to the exam. If I fail, I want to, which I think is totally crazy, because who wants to get prior to the exam?
Who knows what's going to happen in 4 months, so your score's going to be sure.
Right.
If you do have like a specific scenario, call us. There are certain scenarios where we can call testing. Again, we can't, God forbid you see them, but we can call them, and I have in a couple of rare scenarios, we do have a couple of people there we can call directly and say, hey, here's a scenario, is it okay to help us out with it? And then they would basically have to go into it on their end, so we wouldn't be able to see it. However, you're more than welcome to give us a call directly, and we can see how many you have, and then if you had specific questions, we may be able to direct you to testing. Yeah. Yeah, definitely give us a call again. All right. So sorry about that, but seniority credits, so what are they? As we see here, they are extra points that are added to a passing raw score. Now, as we see, passing is in bolded. The reason for that is because it cannot bring an individual, unfortunately, from a failing score to a passing score. Not that anybody here would fail scores, but just something to keep in mind. They can be used more than once, and they are automatically added, so you do not have to call civil service and say, hey, where are my seniority credits? They do that for you. They see you've already been here. They look up your history, and they calculate it for you. They are calculated on a basis where, as you mentioned, it is for every 5 years of service, but it's for every 5 years of service minus the first year. So say you've been with the state for 5 years, but then they subtract that first year. You wouldn't be eligible at that point. But if you've been with the state for 6 years, and then they subtract that first year, you would be eligible for that seniority credit, which they would automatically add only to promotion transition. So the reason that they're not applicable for open competitive is just because the open competitive is really, like we said, open to everybody. So we kind of just give an unfair advantage to individuals who maybe have no experience yet or aren't current state employees, and then that would just unfairly weight it. So that's the whole thought process behind it.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Is that any state service? Like, if I've been in the state for 11 years and 10 different titles, that's okay. Right.
Okay, so for the WebEx people, the individual asked, is it for all state titles? So it's classified state service. What that really means, though, is that within the executive branch. Now, don't worry, I have examples. There are individuals who say maybe work for judicial for 15 years, and then they come over to executive and they say, well, why don't I have seniority credits? What happened? Unfortunately, since that's judicial and we're executive, that wouldn't be applicable. Another example is higher-up SUNYs. Those are actually unclassified positions. Therefore, that wouldn't really count towards state service as well. But if you do, if you sign up, we can see the ones you signed up for. Call us a couple of days after you sign up, and we can see what points you have. We can't see them calculated, but we do see a number. So, good question. All right, so band scoring. You all said you're familiar with ELMS, and that's awesome. It's a great website. How coincidental is it that everybody scores 85, 90, 95, 100? So weird, right? Right. So crazy. So, all right. So after the raw score and seniority credits are determined, they then band individuals, and it looks something like this when you see it on ELMS. Not the groups of people, but the list. So they give you the band of 5-point increments, and what that does is it really benefits the agency as well as the candidate. The reason for that is because if somebody gets 100, 99, 98, 97, it all plays into the rule of 3, which we'll touch on a little bit, and that goes by reachability. So say if somebody's at 100, and then you go 99, 98. Well, if you were to say 100, 95, 95, and then there's 1,095,000, that really opens up the candidate pool, not only for the agency, but also for the candidates who are then banded into general scores. Now, again, don't worry if you're not too familiar with the rule of 3. It is in our info packet, and we'll go over it later with examples, so don't worry. Oh, like we said, keep in mind that the career mobility office, we unfortunately do not score these, but if anything does come up, I just wanted to touch on it again. And no, it's not just you, I promise. Other people do call, and that's totally okay. We can tell you your score if you give us a call. We can see it when they come out. I know sometimes ELMS goes down. If you call us and we're not able to see it, it just means that unfortunately you had not attained a passing score or the fee was not paid. So either one, and we'll definitely help you figure that out. Veterans credits. I know this is a lot of words. Now, who in here is a veteran? Knows a veteran? Okay, all right. That's okay. Yeah, I'll touch on it still. So the veterans credits are applied if you opt into it while signing up for the examination. So when you're signing up, there's going to be a little box that says, are you a veteran? You're going to click yes, and I want to use my credits. Awesome. Now, once you indicate that, it's pretty much assuming that you're going to use them when you eventually make it on the list, but unlike seniority credits, they can only be used one time in your state career. So say the list comes out and great, you have the seniority credits because you have the minimum qualifications for those, but when you go into the interview, what you're going to want to do is ask the interviewers, is my score reachable without my veterans credits? Because again, they're only going to be used once. So you don't want to say waste it if you have, well, not waste it, but you know what I mean. You don't want to use it if you can pocket them and use it later. If you have, say, 100 and it could be useful still. So keep that in mind. I know, Taylor, you had a great example with people from DOC.
Yeah. Some people, for example, for a continuously recruited for a title, they're going to work through those lists, you know, down into the low scores. So sometimes we see people pocket those veteran credits and wait for your promotional field. Wait till you're moving up the ladder in other jobs, and it's going to move you from an 85 to a 90 and things like that. So that's some things I've seen recently.
Again, if you have questions on that, you're more than welcome to call us. We will certainly be able to answer those for you. In addition, there's also a new provision of the law for individuals who may have previously used their veterans credits. I believe this is pertaining to individuals who may have been affected by the cleanup of 9/11. So if you've used them prior to January 1st, 2014, and you're affected by that, by the cleanup, you may be able to use them again. So definitely keep that in mind. In addition to veterans credits, has anybody heard of the 55BC program? Yes? Awesome. Does anybody know what it is specifically? It's okay if not. All right. So we don't have a slide on it, but 55B is for individuals with disabilities, and it allows people to come into a competitive title on a non-competitive basis if they have like a qualifying disability. So basically they just fill out the application, and they don't have to participate in that exam, but they do still need to meet the minimum qualifications. So, for example, say an individual meets the customer service requirements for an Office Assistant 1, but they just missed the last holding of the exam, but they do have their 55BC approved application. They can apply as a 55BC candidate. The only difference between 55B and C is that 55C is for disabled veterans, while 55B is for individuals with what they call an ordinary disability. I'm using air quotes. All right, so just to touch on that one. All right, so Taylor is up, and she will talk to us about how eligible lists are generated. Thank you.
Okay, eligible list. So what is the eligible list exactly? It's a list of everybody who was passed the relevant exam. So I know Jeff has touched a little bit on ELMS Online, or the Eligible List Management System Online. It's kind of like some of you are familiar with it, some of you may not be. Here's a little screenshot of how ELMS Online looks if you're not familiar with it. So basically, right up to the top, you're going to have your title, you're going to have the list number or the exam number there, and then what you're going to be able to see is a statewide list of everybody who's passed that exam. So something important to note, there's a couple things you can do. If it's a promotion exam and you just maybe wanted to look at your agency, you can actually filter it out by an agency list, because if you're looking at just the home page, you're looking at everybody on every agency if it was an interdepartmental promotion exam. It's really important to remember with these eligible lists that you're viewing online that these are statewide. So if you see someone, maybe they're appointed at a 75, it doesn't necessarily mean your agency was doing anything fishy or anything like that. They may have been in a more remote area of the state where they were able to go down through that list a little bit quicker than, say, the Albany area, where maybe they're still only at those higher scores. So agencies aren't canvassing these statewide lists. call a cert or a certification. And that's basically like a little filter that's pulling out people who are interested in a specific location. It's going to look at people who are maybe interested in either part-time, full-time, or both. Maybe if it's a shift position or non-shift position. So remember, from these statewide lists, agencies are just going to pull their little area. So for example, Albany. They're going to pull Secretary 1 who are willing to accept a position in this area. When you're in your eligible list management system online account, it's going to be the same places where you would have, the account where you would have logged in to apply for an exam. It's also where you can view your score notices, but most importantly, there are geographic preferences as to where throughout the state you may be willing to accept employment. Okay, so now agencies are pulling their certs. They want to start getting an idea of who's interested in these positions that they're looking to fill. They want to start looking at this candidate pool. Okay, so something to think about with appointments before we get into this order of certification is that appointment mechanisms are really equal. So transfers are equal to reinstatements, are equal to eligible lists. And no one way supersedes another in terms of appointment mechanisms. Agencies do have a lot of freedom in how they choose to select candidates. However, if they are opting to use an eligible list, specifically like a promotion or a transition eligible list, it needs to be done in this specific order. So first, the agency needs to look at their promotion field. So for Department of State, if they're looking through their Secretary 1 list, they need to look at everybody who is a Department of State employee first that's on that list. Once there are fewer than 3 people or candidates willing to accept, they now can move into all other agencies' promotion eligible list. So once they've gone through their own people, now they can move on to this bigger pool of other agencies' promotion lists.
And they still have to be reachable. Like, for instance, someone at Department of State, Secretary 1, and got an 85, can they overlook the person who got the 85 and go outside the Department of State to someone that got a 70?
Well,
Or do they still have to go off to the people at the agency that you're working at?
yeah. So they're going to have to look at all the people in their own agency, but then they're not going to jump down to a 70 at someone else's agency or a different agency. Once that list is exhausted, they're starting at the top of the promotion field for all of
Looking
them.
at the Department of State, let's say they're looking at the list, and are they looking at the 100th person in the same manner that you do when you look at another agency?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, they're going to use something called the rules rate, and I think that's actually our next slide. So great question.
Okay.
Yep. So we've exhausted our pool and our promotion field here at Department of State. Say we've exhausted our other agencies' promotional field. And now becomes the agency's choice if there were a transition or open competitive exam. From there, they can look at either one. Transition does not supersede an open competitive exam. It's the agency's choice. However, they can't flip-flop between the transition and the open competitive. They kind of have to pick one, and that's what you're sticking with.
Can you explain that other agency promotional list? I don't really understand.
So, sure. So I'm going to use the Secretary 1 because that's like been on all our screenshots and everything. So for the agency's promotion field, if we're looking at Secretary 1, we're looking at all the people at Department of State who took that Secretary 1 exam. If we've exhausted everybody at Department of State, they've either accepted or declined, things like that, we've exhausted that list. We're moving on to all other agencies' promotion fields. So that could be DOT, that could be Civil Service, Department of Health. It's really all-encompassing the greater candidate pool. So because it was an interdepartmental exam. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and I have one more question. Say you were at an agency, most want to say you're on the list, move to another agency. You're all still on that first agency's list?
That's a really good question. So if you, say you transfer, you're on the Secretary one Department of State, say you transfer to civil service, you take something else in the meantime, that's okay. You will stay on Department of State's promotion list until you have completed 26 weeks and have completed probation in your new agency. So if you're a civil service, you have to serve 26 weeks and have completed probation. So if your probation is a year, you got to wait till you finish that year before your score can be moved over into your new promotional unit over at civil service. Now that doesn't happen automatically. That's really important for everybody to remember if you're considering moving. There is a form to fill out, and it's something that's actually submitted to our employment records unit within civil service, and they're able to do that process for you. But if you know you're nearing those requirements that you need to change promotional units, give us a call and we can give you the form or the contact info that you need to jumpstart that process. Just so you know, though, employment records would have to see you complete that year before they can go ahead and process it. It's not something that they can, like, do ahead of time, so it's like today you hit a year. They do have to see you complete it before they're going to process that.
But, well, where does that lead you back to your first date?
So if you're now in civil service and you've moved over your promotional unit, you're now on civil services promotional unit because you are.
Even if that title doesn't even exist.
It's really going to depend on the type of exam. If it's an interdepartmental exam where the title is used statewide in multiple agencies, now you're connected with your new agency. If it was something specific only to Department of State, once you've completed probation, your tie is really kind of severed with Department of State. If it was a specific departmental exam, your tie is really severed once you've completed that probation. Is that making sense to everybody? Yeah. All right, so rule of three, I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit. So what exactly is the rule of three? So who can be considered on the eligible list? The agency is going to start at that top score, and they're going to count 3 people down. Everybody tied with that third score is what we consider immediately reachable. They're immediately available for appointment. So we have an example on the next page. So we have our friends from Seinfeld, Jerry, George, Elaine, Kramer, and Newman. I'm not sure if those of you in the back can see the scores, but Jerry's at a 95, George and Elaine have 90s, and Kramer and Newman have 85. So using the rule of 3, let's count 3 people down. We have Jerry, George, and Elaine. So who's our candidate pool right now using the rule of 3? All 3. All 3. Okay. So say Jerry moved to Florida to pursue another career at Disney or who knows. Now who is our candidate pool using the rule of 3?
Jerry, Kramer, and Newman, because the other 9 is flipped out, and he became the 85, you know, everybody in that block.
Right, right. So exactly what this lady was saying. The new score, you're going to count 3 people down, but everybody tied with that third score is included in that immediately reachable. So now as people are accepting or declining, they might be leaving agencies, they might be leaving state service, whatever the case may be, these agencies are going to work down the list. Okay. So how long does an eligible list generally last for? The answer is generally 1 to 4 years. What you're going to see on the eligible list management system is always going to automatically be set as 4 years from the day that list was established. However, take that with a grain of salt because those lists can be extended if the agency wishes, or it can expire sooner. For example, with the PCO, the Professional Careers Opportunities Exam, it's been held right now, and this can change every 2 years. So while the current 2017 list says it's good until 2021, the PCO was just held in 2019. So once that new list is established, established, the old list is expiring 30 days later. So if you ever see an exam come out for something that you're on a list for again, if it's announced again, don't ignore it, take it. Because if you don't take it, when that old list expires, your name is expiring with it. So this all ties back into what I'm saying about the email notification. You don't want to ignore it because just because it says 4 years doesn't mean it can't expire sooner, or it could be extended later, but we don't know that. So just always keep an eye on those exams.
I have a question though along the lines of exams. How can you find out with promotional exams that are agency specific? Like what specific exams are promotional exams just specific to DOS? Like, is there somewhere on the site that you can find that, or
Unfortunately,
instead of?
so really, unfortunately, all exam planning is confidential, and that could change. I mean, sometimes an exam could have been only open to one agency the last holding, but this time they realized other agencies want to use this title. They have a need for it now, and so maybe it's going to open up. So it's definitely difficult to say definitively. One indicator might be if there's like a very agency-specific title. Like for example, at Office of General Services (OGS), they have the Business Services Center. So some of their BSC rep exams are really only like an OGS title. So that's going to be departmental. Who knows? Maybe eventually that would open up to other agencies if say they want BSC reps at different agencies for the time being. But that's why I always look at those exam announcements, because I've seen exams that maybe were only open to civil service before, but now they're open to more. Unfortunately, it's tough to say. Okay, so what is a Canvas letter? How many of you have received Canvases? Okay, yeah. So a Canvas letter is to see if you are interested in a specific position. It is not a job offer. It's just going to give you some general information on position. So location, starting salary, is it full-time or part-time? Sometimes it'll tell you the negotiating unit, things like that. It's just giving you specifics and seeing if you're interested in that position. Yes.
Do you have to confirm how often people actually get jobs if they're canvassing?
No, because canvassing is something that civil service doesn't actually oversee. That's something that's very agency specific. So we wouldn't have any information on that, unfortunately. So this is yes.
Sorry, people on the webinar are asking me the questions that people in here
Oh,
are
I'm
asking.
sorry. Yes. Sorry about that. Okay, so somebody just asked about if we have any statistics about the amount of people that may be hired from Canvases. That we don't have that information because canvassing is actually not overseen by civil service, and it's very agency specific. So there really wouldn't be a way for us to collect data on that. Every agency is so different with their interviewing and canvassing processes. So here's a screenshot of a typical Canvas letter. I always say read these really, really carefully because however you respond, it could impact how you're considered in the future. I'm not going to read through necessarily every line because it's probably really small. My best advice is just to read those really carefully. One thing I will highlight is the TI, temporarily inactive. I've seen this come into play sometimes. If you think you're going to be out of town an extended period of time, I had a gentleman that had to go overseas for, I think, a family funeral, and he was gone for like a month, so he wasn't getting these canvases. He couldn't get to his mail, and he couldn't return them either in that time frame. A good thing to do in that instance is to mark yourself temporarily inactive until you're able to look at your mail again and return your canvases. That may not be as much of an issue moving forward. A lot of agencies are moving to the email canvas route, so you could still mark yourself temporarily inactive if you didn't think you're going to have access to your email and things like that. But what I highlight is reading the effects of acceptance or declination that are located on the back of the canvas letter. So, for example, just really quick, if you turn down a temporary position, it's not going to impact your future consideration for permanent. Only going to take you out of consideration for those temporary positions. But just read on the back of those canvas letters for anything you say, how is this going to impact me moving forward? If maybe I'm not interested now, but I might be interested later.
Regarding your canvas letter, I could put in a lottery, like let's say the PAPT, like 200 people get 100. You're not going to get a canvas off 100, so like the group is then put in a lottery per se, and then it's randomly picked for computers,
I
right?
know it's at random. I don't know exactly how every agency does that. I don't know if it's at random, not alphabetically. I'm not sure how they filter that out. I do know it's at random, especially for those larger exams, like you're saying with the
And just
agency.
because you didn't get a canvas, if you've got 100 on it,
Oh,
you can still, and you see it posted on the
absolutely.
state jobs NY, you can still apply.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic point to make. Thank you for saying that. So just because you got canvassed for something, if you see that posting and you know you're reachable with 100, still give it a shot. Just because they didn't canvass you, don't miss out on an opportunity. Take that initiative, put it in that resume and cover letter. Okay, so Jess is going to actually walk us through probation, and probation is actually your last process in the examination. How many of us are on probation right now? I'm raising my hand because we are. Yay! I'm glad we're not alone. Okay, but it's not terrible, I promise. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's okay. Remember, it's the training and testing period for both you and the agency. So you do you, and you're going to make it through. So generally speaking, how long it lasts is going to be based on your salary grade. So as we see here, grade 13 and below, again, generally civil service's favorite word, it's going to be a probationary period of 8 to 26 weeks, so we see 2 to 6 months. And for grade 14 and higher, there's generally that probationary period of 12 to 52 weeks, so 3 months to a year. We really tell people to expect to serve probation for that maximum length, only because, I mean, it's better for really everybody. The agency doesn't quite know you yet, and that's okay. You're going to show them what you got in a little bit, but you're really going to want to expect to serve that length of time. But as scary as probation sounds, we really want to keep in mind that, like I said, it's not only benefiting the agency, but also you, because if you leave another title, say you are an office assistant 1 and you're promoted to office assistant 2, and you get that hold, your hold is tied to your probation. So if you go in and you're only having 8 weeks of probation, say, who knows, you're only going to have that hold for 8 weeks. And it's really important to kind of have that hold in your back pocket. You might not know, hey, maybe things don't work out there. You're going to want to keep that. So definitely keep that in mind. There are a couple exceptions, though. So with a traineeship, for example, even though most of them start out at grade 13, unfortunately it doesn't last 6 months. It's going to be the whole 2 years, all the way through the trainee too. In addition, agencies can also extend probation as a means of maybe excuse absences. Maybe they went over like the allotted limit of a certain amount of days. They may also use it in lieu of termination in scenarios where they really see something in this person and they do great work, but things just aren't quite matching or meshing very well at work at the moment, and they really want to give them another chance. For traineeships, though, that doesn't work because after 2 years, it's really up or out, unfortunately. No pressure. So just important things to keep in mind. If you do have questions on your probation specifically, you can give us a call because there is a part of civil service law that we reference, Policy Bulletin 1601. It does tell us regarding your negotiating unit, what grade you're going into, how long you should expect to serve, whether you get one at all, and what date. We can see if you're on probation now, what date specifically it's set to end. You do have,
What if someone's going just from, instead of using the 70.1, they were doing a grade 9 to a grade 9, would you use, is there still a probational period, even if you're not going for a promotional?
Sure. So the question was, if you're going from either your same title or same grade level, would there be the same probationary period, even if you're not changing that grade level? Generally speaking, yes, and we say generally because it really largely depends on the appointment method. So if in that case, it would most likely be transfer. Transfer is going to be, the probation is going to be optional on the point of the hiring agency, on the end of the hiring agency. So say they know that you know this job, you've been it for 15 years, and you don't really need a probation, but you just kind of wanted to change the pace. They may say, okay, you transfer here, you've already been serving in it, you don't really need one. But it's only optional for transfer. If it's a list appointment, reinstatement, it's absolutely mandatory. Transfer, it's not, yeah, absolutely. All right, so leaves of absence. How many of us have ever had a leave of absence? Maybe they know of them, anything? All right, cool, we got one, thank you. All right. Still, you did. All right, so mandatory, as this indicates, is required by civil service law. This is going to happen when you come back through reinstatement or when you are promoted to another position. That's going to be mandatory. You have a mandatory leave of absence from your former title that gives you that hold. Discretionary is really on the discretion, that's the word, of the agency that you'd be leaving. So say I've been in my title, I haven't, but for 10 years, and I want to go back to school and get a doctorate or something. Your agency can say, all right, we know you've done really good work. Again, this is completely their choice. You've done really good work. You've been very loyal to us. We want to give you this discretionary hold for X amount of time. The max they can do is 2 years. Anything further than the 2 years for a discretionary leave, they would need approval from the Civil Service Commission, but that is the max that they're allowed to do. If any time in that 2 years you decide, cool, thanks, I kind of want to go back to work, you have that hold to go back to. So that's why those are important. One thing we really like to tell people is with the both mandatory and discretionary, if you're leaving your current position, job, title, agency, whatever, email your human resources office so that you have in writing and say, I am verifying that I have a mandatory or discretionary hold through X date, which means for Y amount of time. That way, when they email you back, you have that. You know, you have it for your own records, and they can come back and say, sorry, you know, whatever. But just very, very important thing to keep in mind. All right. So as we talked about mandatory a little earlier, here's just some examples. This is not all inclusive, so some examples of when a mandatory leave is granted is when an individual is promoted or transferred, like we said. FMLA also. There are military law, so say if you're currently, you know, you're not active in the military, but you get a call, you have to go, you have a mandatory leave of absence, so that's okay. And if you're appointed to temporary, provisional, or contingent permanent in your own agency. Does anybody know what happens if you are appointed to temp, provisional, or contingent, I'll say temp or provisional, in another agency? So say you're at Department of State, and you want to come to civil service on a provisional basis. Does anyone know what will happen? No. Regarding your leave of absence. I'm sorry, I should have specified. So you're at Department of State, you say, I really like this provisional, that sounds great, something I can do. If you go to another agency on a temp or provisional basis, you are not granted a mandatory leave of absence. You would have to ask for a discretionary, which again, your agency does have the right to say no to. So that's very, very important to keep in mind. I know dollar signs are still very intimidating, especially for provisional, but if you, go ahead.
If you leave and go, and they're not holding that, doing that, honoring that mandatory because they can't, or A, it's against policy, what happens to the state employee? They're out of job if it doesn't work out as a provisional?
Yep.
So it's risky.
It is exactly right. Yes, exactly. Because we do get people who call and they say, you know, I don't know all my options. I'm really looking at this provisional. I don't even know if I'll meet the minimum qualifications for the test when it comes up. That's a great question, and we do get that quite often. So thank you for asking that. The question was that if the individual leaves and they don't have a mandatory leave of absence, and then they're not appointed permanent after the provisional, sorry, I'm repeating the letter. Are they then out of job if they're unfortunately not appointed permanent? The answer is yes. They unfortunately would not have the job, and that's why provisional is risky. if you ever find yourself in this scenario, give us a call. We'll look at absolutely everything. We can see your work history, go over civil service law, see what you may be eligible for, find out some other options for you. So we actually did talk about this. Sorry, I just talked a little too much. So as I mentioned, discretionary leave is really at the employee's request. It is not mandatory. All right. So incumbent, and contingent permanent. How many of us have really seen these words? Probably not a whole lot. Not really used a ton. Okay. Incumbent, as we see, is when the employee is sitting in the position. So I'm a human resources specialist, trainee, staffing. I'm incumbent in this position. If I held a program aide previously and I had a hold to it, I would be incumbent in the program aide. So I'm earning income, I'm sitting in my current position, and incumbent is the title that I have a hold on. That's another way to put it, or a leave of absence from. Contingent permanent is when an individual is sitting in a position, they're incumbent in a position that somebody else is incumbent on. So we'll actually look at a visual example. So say if you're in a traineeship and you're hired contingent permanent. I mean, you may even have seen this on State Jobs NY when looking for jobs. It'll say status contingent permanent. That's what they're referring to. Somebody else left that position, and they have a hold on that. So just important thing to keep in mind, and we do have a visual example. Don't worry, if you're a visual learner like myself. All right, so we have Mr. Green. He's an office assistant 2 keyboarding, and we have Miss Red, who's an office assistant 1 keyboarding. So Mr. Green gets promoted to secretary 1. Yay! All right. I don't remember what I'm doing now. So he goes up to the secretary 1. No one had a hold on it. So he's permanent. He now is going to be incumbent in the office assistant 2 because he has a hold on it and he just left it. So he's incumbent and has that hold. We see Miss Red with her office assistant 1. She's going to get promoted to Mr. Green's former position. So because he has a hold on it, she's going to be contingent permanent, contingent on the fact that he doesn't return. All right. So then she will have her hold. She will have her hold on the office assistant 1 keyboarding as we see here. All right. What happens when Mr. Blue comes in and he is now incumbent in the office assistant 1 keyboarding? What's up, new guy? So Mr. Green doesn't like his secretary 1, and he wants to go back to his office assistant 2 keyboarding. What is going to happen to you, Mr. Red? Well, we're about to find out. Sit tight. It is loading. All right. Spoiler alert, she has to go back to her OA1 keyboarding. Mr. Green is going to go back to his office assistant 2 keyboarding. And there they go. I know what you're thinking, oh my gosh, what happens to Mr. Blue? So these 2 return to their incumbent, they return to their hold. What about Mr. Blue? He was displaced through no fault of his own. So if this ever happens to you, you may have what we call reemployment rights. Please give us a call. Please give us a call. You may have rights to that position elsewhere, but we won't know until we see your particular scenario, and we actually administer the reemployment system. So please give us a call if this happens to you. In addition, you may be able to be reactivated on the list that you were previously appointed from. So that's another process that we can help you out with if that were to happen to you. Good transfer. You still need? Okay. All right. So civil service law has a very long definition of transfer, but the simple way I look at it really is that it's an individual who is in a title at a agency and they're moving to a new title and or agency. So if you switch titles or you switch agencies or if you switch agencies, you transferred. This is not to be confused with a reassignment. A reassignment is often confused with one because it's where an individual actually keeps their same title, but they're in their same agency. I know someone personally who actually did this. They're a senior accountant at the Office of the State Controller. He kept saying, oh, I transferred. Well, no, you didn't, because you're still a senior accountant at the Office of the State Controller. You just moved to another unit. So that would be a reassignment. So a transfer is where you have new jobs, new agency. If you have any questions on transfer, we do have this FAQ link here. It breaks down the minimum qualifications we'll go over and things like that. All right. So We did briefly discuss earlier with you the Section 70.1 transfer. This is really the most common type of transfer. So with 70.1, it's really largely titles that have similar minimum qualifications. They may be filled by the same examination, things like that. So Section 52.6 is it's going to be between titles that are deemed administrative. Don't ask me what the definition of that really is, but as civil service law, some examples are really going to be a lot of titles that are grade 18 and above. You won't really see this too often with titles below that. But some of them are some examples are human resources, budget titles, law, things like that. And Section 70.4 is different from these two because these two are title-based. Now what happens in civil service is they go to the many a title that exists in New York State Civil Service, and they say, okay, what titles are transferable from this one? They go one by one, regular process. Section 70.4 is not title-based, it's actually examination-based. So this is why earlier when we were saying, take every exam that you're qualified for and interested in, this is why, because it really can open you up not only to list appointment, but also transfer. As really specific minimum qualifications, you have to, I believe it meet the open competitive minimum qualifications, so there needs to be an open competitive component. You also need to have passed a exam appropriate for the title that you're going into. And for all three of these types, there are general requirements for transfer. So we have at least 1 year of permanent competitive service in your current title, no more than 2 salary grade increase, and has anyone heard, everybody's heard the term, the 2-grade jump, I suppose? Yeah. Everybody's favorite term. It kind of makes sense, because if we were about to go from a 9 to a M6, I mean, what's the point of exams, right? So it kind of makes sense that you can't jump up more than 2 without a list appointment. We'll go into the contingencies on that, because a lot of people seem to think you can only do that once in your career, but that's not necessarily true. It has to be an approved title if you're transferring under 70.1 and 52.6. 70.4 is not included here, of course, because it depends on the individual and what exams they participated in. This right here is really important. Stick around at the end of this slideshow because we're actually going to walk through this. It's our database of the over, I want to say roughly 4,200 titles that exist within state service. Again, database doesn't have vacancies, but we'll walk through it in a little bit. All right. So here, yes, absolutely.
My question is on transfers combined with the Rule 3.
Yes. How do you mean?
So, when they do interviews, normally they do them based on Rule 3.
Yeah.
If it's interagency or outer agency. Okay, so I want to know if I went on an interview, it was outer agency.
Okay.
So I was one for transfer 70.4 transfer.
Okay, yes.
Off of a list, off of the ESD list.
Yep.
Then they were interviewing internal also.
Okay.
So when they interview internal,
Mm-hmm.
and how do they interview internal and external on the same list for transfer number 1 if they have to follow the Rule of 3?
Okay.
And my question with that is because when they contacted me after the interview, they said something about an A list and a B list and a C list, that I was a candidate, and they checked my references, I made their B list, but I didn't get the position because they had to hire off of their A list.
Okay.
So if they know they have to hire internal off of their A list, why would they even interview off of the B list, knowing you have an A list, B list, and you have to hire internal? What was the purpose of interviewing outside people?
Sure. So the question was, how does the Rule of 3 in interviewing pertain really to transfers? Now, in your particular scenario, it sounds like it may be a little bit different. When you're looking into 70.4, there does have to be the open competitive component, whereas it sounds like the title you're discussing might have been promotional. So I'm not quite sure what the title specifically was for, or what.
I told you it was for the BSC rep.
What examination was it? What
The BSC rep.
The open competitive component?
So BSC rep 1, right, it was open competitive.
Okay.
Grade 11.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going for 74 transfer, but there is also BSC rep and the BSC. So when I interviewed, they said it was an A-list and a B-list. I guess A-list is internal, people that are hiring. B is external.
Sure.
So they did take my references, but then they said they had to hire internal off of their A-list before they could hire external. So why interview all of us off of the B-list, knowing you have to hire off of your A-list?
That really was probably just an Office of General Services internal maybe flub. I truly, since we don't have access to that specific info, and I don't have your work history in front of me as well as what they were seeing, we unfortunately wouldn't be able to tell specifically. But it's important, too, to keep in mind that, as Taylor said earlier, we have reinstatement, transfer, and list appointment. They may have just been reviewing maybe everybody on the list. Maybe they were interviewing all transfer or reinstatement candidates as well. As long as the person that they hire is legally appointable, then they're following civil service law. So what I suspect happened was they really just interviewed everybody, wanted to see the candidates, and then they proceeded. But again, unfortunately, we cannot see.
I just was wondering, because I've heard also before about other agencies have an A-list and a B-list.
Yeah. Yeah, so the A and B lists are really only for promotional examinations. So when the minimum qualification comes out, there's going to be the A qualifications, and usually those are going to be titles that are direct line. So if it's for payroll assistant 2, it's going to be payroll assistant. Oh, really?
It wasn't payroll.
Read your mind. So if it was payroll assistant 2, the A title would be payroll assistant 1. B is going to be really titles whose career ladders may be transferable. Maybe they're deemed similar. So that might be something like program aide, payroll assistant, accountant aide maybe. So those are just going to be kind of like, the B titles are just similar in nature, but not necessarily in the direct line. So that it's possible that it's honestly possible that they may have just called people for interviews or done whatever they felt they had to do, and then figured out after the fact who really was, we can't do that.
I just was wondering, like,
yeah.
There was A-list internal, and then a B-list, like, if you know you had your rule of 3 that said you internal, why
right.
the rule of 3 external if you knew you had to follow the internal list?
They may just, yeah, sometimes it goes to by declination, so they may not have known who was going to decline. There's just so many factors in the hiring process. But yeah, okay. So I will turn over to Taylor for staffing employees. Early on in their career.
Right. So Jess is actually touching on this a little bit further, but how many of you think a state employee can only transfer once in their whole career? Anybody? Can't be stumped. The answer is no. We're actually going to look at some different kinds of transfers in the next few slides. What kind of can and can't happen. Okay, so we have some lateral transfers here. So I know it might be a little small, but there's some different salary grade 9s. So for example, an office assistant 2, that's a grade 9. So you could certainly laterally transfer. Maybe you're an office assistant 2 at DOS, and you want to go work as an office assistant 2 at OGS. That's a lateral transfer. You could do that again, and then you could go again to be another office assistant 2, or maybe another comparable grade 9 at civil service. You're laterally going. That is allowed if they are approved transfer titles. As to how that may look in your work history, that might be a little different. You do maybe want to be a little mindful about jumping around a lot, but it is important to find a good fit for you. So yes, you can laterally transfer as long as you meet those time and title requirements, usually that year of service. Okay, what can't happen is here. So we have a salary grade 6. They want to transfer up to an 8. Okay, that's fine. But if they then consequently want to transfer to a 10 and then consequently jump to a 12, that is is where we have to put an ixnay, because now we're going, this is what I'm trying to, so you can go from a 6 to an 8, but then you can't subsequently keep transferring upwards. Because as Jess was kind of touching on, now there's really no purpose for exams if we're all just going to go up all the way. So we can't keep transferring up to salary grades. What we can do, if you transferred from a 6 to an 8, once you get to that 8, you could then take an exam, get an eligible list appointment, and that essentially resets your clock to be able to be eligible for further upward transfer. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So if we go to a 6 to an 8, we take an exam, we get appointed to the 10, now our clock is reset. We're now eligible for further upward transfer. Another thing that I like to really point out to people, so here we have a salary grade 11, say you were a BSC Rep 1 at OGS. You want to transfer up into a program aide at Department of State, that's salary grade 13. You could then laterally transfer into another grade 13, and it might be a traineeship. Completion of a traineeship fulfills the requirement for an intervening examination appointment or eligible list appointment. So you could laterally transfer in that traineeship. If you successfully complete your traineeship, you're going to advance out to that grade 18. Again, your slate is wiped clean. You're now eligible for further upward transfer. Good?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jess was touching on this a little bit further or earlier too. Do you have to serve probation when you transfer? The answer is generally yes. However, with transfers, that is one of really the only appointment mechanism where probation may be waived. However, no probation equals no leave of absence. So if an agency is proposing waiving your probation, think about it carefully, because that safety net of returning back to your hold isn't going to be there really if you don't have a probation connected or a hold connected with it. Again, it's 8 to 26 weeks for employees at a grade 13 or below, and 12 to 52 weeks for 14 and above. So what if you don't like your new job or you don't successfully complete probation? That's okay. When you transfer and you're serving probation, you very likely have a leave of absence that you can return to at any point. Should it be it's not a good fit, the environment's not a good fit, the title's not what you thought it would be, whatever the case may be, it's okay. You can return back to your hold. It doesn't necessarily mean, however, if you're serving in your new title on a Friday, you hate it, you want to go back to Monday, give your agency a little more time than that, at least 2 weeks. It's a courtesy to your current employee, and it also allows the two different HR agencies to kind of do coordination on their end. They might have to set up your desk again. So while you can certainly return your hold at any time, give your agency some notice if you're planning on returning. The leave allows you to return your previous title before completion is completed. Once probation is completed, that hold is severed, and now there's really no longer a mechanism to go back to your former title other than reinstatement, which we're going to get into. So reinstatement is an option for both current and former employees. So I know there's a lot of text on this page. I'm going to break it out a little bit. So in order to be eligible for reinstatement, you need to have had former permanent service. You can't have been separated from that title or that agency for any disciplinary reason. One thing to note is most agencies do not consider probationary termination to be a disciplinary action or removal. Probationary termination could be as simple as just wasn't a good fit. So keep that in mind. It's only for disciplinary removal. It needs to be in the best interest of the state. Usually, if an agency is looking to reinstate someone, they're going to provide that justification as to why it would be in their best interest. If you've been separated for less than 1 year, the agency can reinstate 1 year, there is just one additional step, and this is reviewed very routinely, so no concern. The Civil Service Commission would need to review the reinstatement and approve it. These Civil Service Commission meetings happen like once, twice a month. They're reviewed routinely, so it's not necessarily a big deal. It's just keep in mind if you're gone for more than 1 year, there's another step there. Reinstatement is discretionary on the part of the hiring agency. So kind of getting back to how those appointment mechanisms are really viewed equal. You're eligible for reinstatement when you have former permanent service in a title. It doesn't guarantee that they have to bring you back. They could be looking at other people, but it is certainly an option. You know, we've had people move out of state because they or a loved one maybe pursued a career elsewhere and now they're returning, and reinstatement gives the state an option to be able to bring you back. And sometimes it's a great thing. You've already worked in that position maybe. There might be a minimal amount of training for you versus someone who's very new, so it's certainly an option for agencies to consider. Reinstatement is a mobility option for current employees. So if you don't have that hold anymore, you've completed your probation, and you want to go back to a title that you served in permanently, reinstatement can be an option for you. One thing to consider, if you are a current state employee and you're moving based on reinstatement, this is another area where your agency does not need to grant you a mandatory leave of absence. If you're moving based on former service in a prior title, if you're looking to be reinstated, you can request a discretionary leave of absence, but that leave of absence would not be mandatory. So if you've held that title for at least a year, when you were formerly in that title, you probably met the requirements for transfer at that point, right? That your service requirements. If you go to get reinstated, say you use state service and you're coming back, you are not only eligible for reinstatement to your former title, you are also eligible for reinstatement to your former title's transfer title. So that really opens up a broader pool for you to look at if you're looking to get reinstated. And some of those might even be 2 salary grades up from where you left, depending on your situation. So something to think about. And as Jeff was also saying, in the case of probation with reinstatement, they may not be waived. It's mandatory that you serve that full time. Okay. So now we're kind of going to wrap up our merit presentation. What we're going to get into now is modeling our GOTIT, our glossary of title site, and all the information you can find there, like your transfer titles and things like that. We can pull this back up at the end. This slide, this has our contact information if you ever want to give us a call. But right now we're going to hop into GOTIT. This is another one of the packets too in the green folder, just in case you guys want to follow along, because we're going to be using those 4 categories.
Jessica, you want to see? Jessica, you want to see?
Okay, so right now we're going to show you where you can get to our GOTIT glossary of titles page if you were on the Civil Service homepage, right? So this is kind of the hub whenever you're looking to make a change in your career. You might want to add the Civil Service homepage to your favorites. You can look at exams, all that wonderful stuff, but right now we're going to hop into GOTIT. Where do we go? All right, we're going to click on State Employees, and this little drop down appears. You're going to go to the very bottom option for our office, the Career Mobility Office, and click on that. So once you're there, this is our Career Mobility website homepage. This is not GOTIT. Sometimes people think they're searching for transfers here. It's not going to find it here. Where you want to go to get to GOTIT is over on the top left-hand side. There's a little column with a bunch of resources. But if you're looking to get to GOTIT, it's our top option on the left. So you'll click there. And now we're on our home page, the Glossary of Titles Inquiry Tool. So here you kind of have 4 main quadrants with different kinds of searches. So I'm going to walk you through the first two, and Jessica's going to walk you through our last two. So, okay, we're going to start with a title search. Now, this is the most common search that I walk people through. It's the most common. It's one of the quicker ways to get to transfer options and things like that. So we're going to model a title search now. So in the title keyword, put in, what's some of your titles here? We'll pick a title.
Licensing services clerk.
Oh, yeah,
That's very common.
Licensing service, okay, we're gonna go with that. Okay, so licensing services clerk. It's important to remember what's got it. Avoid abbreviations because it's a little finicky, so just err on the side of caution and type in your whole title. Now, there are a couple other search features here that you can do. You could select jurisdictional class if you were only looking to see things that are maybe competitive versus non-competitive. You could do a minimum or a maximum salary grade search. You could also filter it if you have your heart set being in a specific agency. But if you really just want a very general type, general information, I say leave everything that's below your title blank. Just because you don't want to filter out something, you don't want to miss something just by putting in too much criteria into our search. All right, so we typed in our title, let's hit search. And we're going to come to our title search results page. So let's click on the top option because that's our title, licensing services clerk. And actually, if you were back on the title search page too, it'll show you what the jurisdictional class of that title generally is. So it's competitive there. So here there's a bunch of really helpful information. In the top option, there's an approximate amount of positions. So for this one, it's for the licensing services clerk. It says approximately 173 positions statewide. So with that, it's super, super important to remember that approximate amount that you're seeing there, those are both filled in vacant. You're not going to find vacancies on Dotted. It's just giving you general title information. There are links as to where you can find vacancies, but Dotted is really just to do your initial research as you're considering making a move. But if you ever wanted to know where these positions are statewide, like what agencies use them or what counties use them, there is a little link up at the top, the second sentence, that says view a breakdown of positions by county. And, okay, so now if you scroll down, it's going to give you a breakdown of all the different agencies where it exists. Again, both filled and vacant, but still a really good research tool for people to look at. Especially if you're interested in a specific agency or maybe you're looking to move to another county, it can be a good way of looking through it. Okay, so we go back to our title page. We have some other general information here. You have the career ladder for the title. There's a small little job description. There's summary minimum qualification. Usually there will be a link to the previous exam for this title. Exam qualifications can always change, but it can be a really good starting point. If you were interested in the title or it's a title you want to get to, look at the minimum qualifications. What were they looking for the last time? And really guide your search. If we go back up, though, what I find most people are looking for if they're going to Dotted is the transfer options. So over here we have a box, possible 70.1 transfers. Go to the bottom and click View All Transfers. Okay. So now we're at a comprehensive listing of all the titles that a licensing services clerk can go into. And as you scroll down, you can see there's quite a bit. Some are other grade 9s, there's your lateral transfer. Some are 11s, there's your upward transfer.
And that's still 70.1, whether you're doing a 2-grade jump or doing a lateral.
Yes. Yep, 70.1 either way. There are sometimes 70.1 transfers that require special qualifications. That can be things like a language parenthetic, if it says Spanish language after. Your special qualification would be you would have to demonstrate language proficiency. If something has keyboarding after it, you'll probably have to do some sort of typing test or something like that. If you're ever wondering, though, what the special qualifications needed for that transfer are, give us a call because we have a database that we could look up what that might be. So sometimes for more advanced titles, it might be like a specific amount of credit hours in a field or something like that. So that is our title search. If you're ever stuck in your title search or you're like, what does Taylor and Jess say? This packet, this audit packet, will walk you through exactly what we're doing now. But again, give us a call too. We'll walk it through with you right on your computer, and we'll be on the other line, go step by step. Okay, so we did title search. If you ever want to get back to Got It Home, just click on the top left-hand side where it says Got It. It'll bring you right back to our little home page. Okay, so we're going to do an occupational search now. So unfortunately, we don't have a feature yet that would be minimal qualifications. So for example, every job only requires a bachelor's degree. We don't necessarily have that sort of filter, but I usually say occupational search is your second best option because you're looking based on a specific field or category that you're interested in. Maybe you're pursuing a degree right now and you want to see what's out there. When you complete your degree, here's a place to look. Okay, so it's really going to break it down by all the fields you can think of: accounting, agriculture, human services, whatever the case may be. So let's click the top title: accounting, auditing, and financial administration. Okay, now it's going to break it out a little further. So now it's going to go into statistics or tax, things like that. So again, let's click budget examiners and analysts. That was what you were looking to do. It's now going to give you a comprehensive listing of all the titles that kind of fit into that specific little occupational field. So again, if you're really looking maybe you have an accounting degree and you want to see what titles does the state use where I could really put that degree to use, the occupational search is a really good place to start. It's not necessarily the search I use the most often, like I do the title search, but I'll often point it to people, like I said, if you're completing a degree in something and people really have a specific interest that they want to pursue, this is a great place to start for that. Okay. So now we're going to go back to our home. Jess is going to walk us through our last two. Okay. So the other two, as you can clearly see, are going to be agency search and the geographic search. So we'll start off with agency search, and this is going to bring a super big old list of agencies that exist within New York State Service. As you can see, there's a boatload of docs, whatever one. For example, so say, I guess for this purpose, what it's going to do is bring you up like a list of titles that exist within that agency. So that's our goal with this one. So say we're going to the Office of the State Controller, I guess. They have a lot of accountant titles, so we'll look that up. Or whatever. I'm just looking for something general. Oh, there it is. And sometimes it's alphabetized by like the last letter in the agency, so. Okay. Alrighty. So here we see for main page, that's going to be their website. That's going to be how many titles exist. So this is 242 titles right here, and 4,178 existing positions, again, both filled with vacant. And then it gives you a neat little breakdown just of what they do and who they are and cool stuff like that. So you see here that, say, somebody wants to be, well, probably not assistant director. There's only like one of them, but yeah, say they want to go, okay, associate actuary. So they're calculating numbers based on insurance and things like that. So you can see here that it would be a grade 24, and that 5 of them exist who work at the Office of the State Controller. Associate attorney, same idea, and all the way down the list. And if we want to click on any one of these titles, really, it doesn't matter what one, we're just looking for an example. There we go. And then here, of course, is we're brought to the title page where you can get the info like Taylor brought us to earlier, or you would just be able to find something more specifically based on agency. This is really useful for a lot of people who say, I'll link to their comptroller right now. So say they have a degree in accounting and they think, okay, well, the comptroller works a lot with fiscal matters. That's what
this one's my personal favorite, the geographic search, only because I'm horrific at geography. So, this is obviously going to break it down, as you can see, by region numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, you don't have to count, all the way to 9, down in the city. This is really ideal for people who may be moving, or say, maybe they want to stay with their agency, and they know that there's another facility for their same agency elsewhere in the state. So, hey, maybe I'll be able to keep my title if I decide for a reassignment. So, we'll pick whatever county. You can even do Albany. That's still a chunk of money.
Also, if you don't, you can always put your cursor over, but if you don't want to do that, you can just click the counties in your state and it's going to give you a listing.
Right. Which I usually need to right. So this is going to break it, as we can see, by agencies that exist in Albany, and then within Albany, they also have ones that exist in Albany County. So say you don't just want Albany, you want Belmar, Latham, Loudonville. This is going to split it up by little individual cities and townships. So, okay, we see that within Latham, in Albany County, there's a Department of Law area, there's Region 1 Transportation and Emergency Housing, maybe search for somebody if they're looking for.
You know, sometimes we'll walk people through it, like if maybe they rely on public transportation and they need something that's like really on a bus line, we'll walk them through a geographic search, like what might be right within that, so.
Other than that, on the bottom of the page, I like to refer people to this, the useful links. It brings us directly to everything that we really talked about today. List of current exams. We have a civil service website, ELMS, which we discussed, Governor's Office of Employee Relations. So this is just going to kind of be a one-stop shop. If you're lost and don't know where to go, this is a really good reference. And that explains what it is. Definitely.
So like we were saying, got it, it doesn't indicate vacancies, it's just giving you that general information. But if you're ready for that next step and you're like, okay, now I know what my transfer options are, now how do I initiate the process? You would go to State Jobs NY and apply to any openings you see in your approved transfer titles, and then you would go to the State Jobs New York website to start looking for those vacancies.
Just one thing I want to point out too with State Jobs NY. Two things actually. When I'm kind of walking through someone through this website on the phone, I like to tell them to check both, because first things first, agencies do not have to post on this website at all. They are not mandated to do so. This does not by any means have every single vacancy in New York State Service. It's going to have most of them, but they're not mandated to post, cross-post, or whatever. So some might only be existing here for just state employees, and maybe they're actually accepting New York State employees, but it's only posted here. So what I like to do is just check both. A lot of the times you do see overlap, but that is not in every scenario. So to get a big picture, I recommend both. Another thing to note here is that this website actually recently changed its URL. So this website actually recently changed its URL. I know it's way up here on the tippy top and we can't see it, but it used to be statejobsny.com. So if you have it bookmarked on your computer, make sure you update it, because now it's statejobs.ny.gov. And that might not always redirect, so I just want to give everybody a heads up. Is there any further questions?
We're going to be here hanging out for a little bit after, so feel free to come and chat with us with your questions. We'll try and answer them the best we can on the spot. If it's something really specific to you, we might let you know to give us a call when we have access to our kind of internal databases, but feel free to come talk to us.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all very much for coming. Thank you very, very much to the staff from the CMO for putting on this workshop. And a big thank you also to John Fatalo for running the webinar for us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.